The crystalline moons of Thuros IV cast pale light through the canopy of the great forest, illuminating the desperate scene within the pack leader's den. Vek, the massive alpha of the Krath pack, stood over his youngest cub with golden eyes that betrayed a grief no predator should ever know. The small creature's breathing came in shallow, irregular gasps, its silver fur matted with fever sweat. Around them, the pack's elders had gathered, their lupine faces drawn with sorrow. The Krath were apex predators across 7 star systems, feared warriors whose claws could rend through starship hulls. Yet here, in this moment, they were powerless. The plague that had swept through their world cared nothing for strength or honor. The physicians from the Galactic Medical Consortium have given their final assessment. One elder spoke, his voice a low rumble. They say the cub has hours, perhaps less. The pathogen is unknown to their databases. There is no cure in their vast libraries. Vek's claws dug into the stone floor, leaving deep grooves. He had led his pack through territorial wars, had negotiated treaties with species that once considered the Krath little more than beasts. He had survived assassination attempts and cosmic storms, but he could not save his own child. Then we wait, Vek said, his voice hollow. We honor the cub's journey to the hunting grounds beyond. Actually, a new voice cut through the gloom, speaking in awkward but comprehensible Krath tongue. You might want to hold off on that farewell just a bit longer. Every head in the den snapped toward the entrance. There, silhouetted against the moonlight, stood a human female. She was small by Krath standards, barely reaching Vek's chest, with dark hair tied back in a practical knot and wearing a worn jacket covered in pockets and pouches. Her species was barely known in this sector. Their homeworld, a backwater planet that had only achieved faster than light travel a mere century ago. Who dares enter? An elder began, but Vek raised a massive paw. Elara, he said, recognition in his voice. The human had arrived on Thuros IV 3 months prior, ostensibly as a xenobotanist studying their forest ecosystems. She had impressed him with her fearlessness, walking among creatures that could kill her with a casual swipe. How did you gain entry to my den? Your guards let me through when I told them I might be able to help, Elara said, stepping forward with careful confidence. She approached the dying cub and knelt beside it, her small hands moving gently over its fevered body. May I examine your child? Vek's instincts screamed at him to refuse, to drive this alien away from his vulnerable offspring. But something in the human's eyes, a determined spark that reminded him of his own resolve, made him nod. Elara pulled a small scanning device from one of her many pockets, running it over the cub. She frowned at the readouts, then pulled out what appeared to be a magnifying lens, examining the cub's eyes, gums, and the pads of its paws. The consortium physicians are right about one thing, she said quietly. This isn't in their databases, but that's because they're looking in the wrong places. She glanced up at Vek. Tell me, does your pack have legends of a great sickness? Something from your ancient past, before you reached for the stars? Vek's ears flattened against his skull. The Red Death. It nearly ended our species, 12,000 years ago. But that was Vect. Was the same pathogen, Elara finished. Evolved, adapted, but fundamentally the same. I've been studying your world's ecosystem, your pack's historical records. The patterns match. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small vial containing a thick, green paste. Your ancestors survived because they found a cure, a remedy made from the roots of the thornwood tree and the sap of the moonvine. But as your civilization advanced, as you moved to cities and space stations, that knowledge was forgotten, dismissed as primitive superstition. And you, a human from a species that has barely left its cradle, claim to have rediscovered this? An elder's voice dripped with skepticism. Elara's smile was sharp. That's exactly why I found it. See, humans have a bit of a reputation in our corner of space. We're stubborn, We hold onto old knowledge like pack rats hoarding shiny objects. While other species rush forward, discarding the past as obsolete, we archive everything: folk remedies, ancient medicines, grandmother's recipes, passed down through generations. She held up the vial. When I saw the symptoms, something nagged at me. I cross-referenced your historical texts with human ethnobotanical databases. We have a saying: there's wisdom in old wives' tales. Your physicians, with their advanced technology, couldn't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one. Vec stared at the vial. Every rational part of his mind told him this was madness. The Galactic Medical Consortium represented thousands of worlds, millions of years of combined medical knowledge, and this human, this member of a species considered primitive by galactic standards, claimed to have solved what they could not, but his cub was dying, and in the human's eyes, he saw no deception, only earnest determination. If this harms my child, he began, then you can tear me apart with your bare claws, Alara said simply. I won't resist. But your cub is dying anyway. What do you have to lose? Vec gave a curt nod. Alara moved with practiced efficiency, mixing the paste with water from a flask, creating a thin gruel. She carefully lifted the cub's head and, with infinite gentleness, coaxed the mixture into its mouth. The cub swallowed reflexively. Then they waited. The minutes stretched like hours. The pack elders watched in silence, some skeptical, others hopeful. Vec never took his eyes off his child, counting each labored breath. Then, so subtly at first that he thought he imagined it, the cub's breathing steadied. The irregular gasps became deeper, more rhythmic. Color began to return to its nose and paw pads. The fever sweat that had matted its fur began to dry. One of the cub's eyes opened, unfocused but aware. It made a small sound, not distress, but the querulous mewl of a child seeking its parent. Vec released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Around him, the elders stirred, murmuring in amazement. It will take a few days for full recovery, Alara said, carefully packing away her instruments. I'll leave you detailed instructions for continued treatment and show your physicians how to synthesize more of the remedy. This pathogen might resurface again. Vec looked at the human healer, truly looked at her for the first time. She was small. Yes. And her species was young by galactic standards. But in that moment, he understood something profound about humanity. They didn't discard their past in their rush toward the future. They carried it with them. Every scrap of knowledge. Every hard-won lesson. Every grandmother's remedy and folk tale. Where other species saw primitiveness, humans saw a library of survival. You have saved not just a life, but a bloodline, Vec said, his voice thick with emotion. Alara shook her head. No debt. This is what humans do. We heal. We help. We remember. She smiled. Besides, I'm a sucker for happy endings. As she turned to leave, Vec called out, Alara. Why? Why dig through ancient texts for a species not your own? The human paused at the den's entrance, moonlight haloing her small form. Because somewhere, in humanity's past, someone did the same for us. We almost went extinct a dozen times on our homeworld. We survived because someone remembered an old cure, a forgotten technique, an ancient wisdom. We don't forget that. We can't forget that. It's who we are. She disappeared into the night, leaving the pack leader alone with his slowly recovering cub. In the years that followed, the Kroth would tell the story of the human healer who brought back the ancient remedy. They would speak of it not as a tale of their weakness, but as a lesson learned. That advancement, without memory, is hollow. That wisdom exists in unexpected places, and that the youngest species in the galaxy sometimes carries the oldest souls. And Vec would ensure that never again would his people forget the knowledge of their ancestors. In this, the human had given them two gifts: a cure for the body, and a cure for the dangerous amnesia of progress.